Consciousness. Nomo samanda moto nan rota chikoto shiri shonan Tojito en ya ki un shifura hara shifura chishuri Sohaja senshi gyo shiri e somoko Nomo samanda moto nan chohara chikodo shasono nan Tojito en ya ki uja shifura chishuri Soboja senshi ya shiri e somoko Nomo samanda moto nan chohara chikoto shasono nan Tojito en ki unun shifura Hara shifura chishuri Sohajo senshi gya shiri e somoko
Let us celebrate the liturgy of the day. Let us share the peace. May all beings awaken to that peace which is our true home. Let us take refuge. I take refuge in the ground of being within which I live and move and breathe. Let us make the accord. I take sanctuary in the heart of being, accepting all of my delusions in thought, word, or deed, born of ignorance, hatred, and greed. Let us give thanks. I give thanks for all things, awakening to the interbeing of all nature. May my heart be open and my mind clear. May all be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And may all come to know that peace which is born of insight and understanding. Since it is the practice of enlightenment, that practice has no beginning. And since it is enlightenment within the practice, that realization has no end. Welcome everyone to the, what is this? This is the 22nd Segaki here in Harrisburg, and the 15th at the Dragonfly Temple. Pretty cool. So tonight's reading is by Charles Williams, and I'll say a little bit about Charles Williams after the reading. Many promising reconciliations have broken down because while both parties come prepared to forgive, neither party come prepared to be forgiven. So tonight's talk is inspired by the great Charles Williams. Any of you ever hear of Charles Williams? It's always sad when you know that someone as great as Charles Williams is largely lost to history. Charles Williams was born in the late 1800s, and he was a very incredibly intelligent man. He was afflicted by two things. One, he came from a very poor background, and two, his eyesight began to go bad when he was a young man. And he eventually, near the time of his death, when he was 58, he was going nearly blind. So these were things that affected his life and his story. He went to St. Albans Prep School, which was a very good school in England, and then he won a scholarship to the University of London. But despite his gifts and all of that, because of his financial situations, he was unable to finish or get a degree. So he always loved writing and was such a great writer and such a great literary critic that he was eventually hired by the University of Oxford for their publishing department. And it was very quickly seen that he had incredible skills at proofreading and just at criticism, and he had a wide breadth of history and philosophy and theology, and so he quickly rose to the ranks, by which time, near the end of his life, he was the head of that department. He was the head of the University of Oxford's publishing department without a degree. And he also became renowned for his writing and his poetry, and in fact was at one point the head of the poetry department for the University of Oxford. His writings and his poetry were deeply impressive to those who knew him, including folks like, you probably have heard of, T.S. Eliot and W.H. Auden, who were huge fans of his. His most famous works are his fiction. He wrote supernatural fiction. And so his two most famous pieces are The Descent into Hell and All Hallows Eve. And All Hallows Eve is probably my favorite, which I'm rereading again for the umpteenth time. He was very much into studying theology, and he wrote histories of theology, and he was actually included in the Inklings. Have any of you ever heard of the Inklings? The Inklings was a private group of individuals who got together at a pub, infamously known as the Bird and the Baby. Members of this Inkling group, there were only a few, were C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Dorothy Sayers, and Charles Williams. And it was a great joy for me whenever I was in Oxford that we would go to the pub and hang out in the back room where these guys did their stuff. That's where they would read stuff to each other. And if you look this stuff up, there's really interesting stories. When Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings, he first read it there in that pub to the others to get their opinion and get their feedback. So great stuff. But for me, Williams is more important because of an order he founded called the Order of Coherence. Now, he was coming from a sort of a mystical Christian background, but he very much, I think, was in tune with a lot of the things that we would teach. And so he created this Order of Coherence. And the Order of Coherence was based on a profound understanding of the interdependence of all existence, that our interdependent forms, those are the reality behind the stuff of creation and a defining quality of oneness. And there were certain practices that were enjoined from that. The first practice was the idea that these principles, we talk about them as the three principles, these encapsulated what he believed coherence expressed. And it was expressed most dramatically through the practice of love. And I'm using my own words to sort of interpret some of what he was saying, but the process of love was bearing witness. So in our practice, we talk about not knowing, bearing witness, and healing action. So I understand what Williams was talking about within that understanding or that regard. And so what was the specific meaning for him related to this? The first was the process of bearing witness, which was the process of living with each other through the loving and healing action of sharing tasks and responsibilities. In other words, that we would bear one another's burdens as a community. And the practice that was done in his order, which is similar to the one that we do, is found in both the way that we offer pastoral care, but also in counseling. Because what you're doing in that situation is, whether it's care, where you're mainly just listening to someone who's going through a very difficult time, or it's counsel, where you're not only helping them to bear the burden of what they're experiencing, but you're offering them a way or a path out of that. And so this bearing witness practice is one way to express this sense of this coherence, that he used that word, or we would say oneness or interdependence. And there were two aspects to this practice. The first was called, and it's actually often categorized as romantic theology, because it's all based on love. And it's the idea that all worldly aspects of love are but a reflection of a deeper, more sacred idea of love. And that ultimately they point the lover towards oneness. This is known as the way of affirmation. And in his words, the way of affirmation was not rejecting the world as corrupt and therefore evil, but one should begin with the notion that the world is shunyata, and that we can transmute the various aspects of this world into an enlightened vision of society. And this way of affirmation is about seeing oneness in all people, in all things, and in all circumstances of life. But there's also another part of the practice, and this was called the way of the shadow. And the way of the shadow focuses on the transcendence and otherness and the dynamic quality of the grounded being, or the Dharmakaya. Williams expressed this, and he expressed these two ways as a paradox. And these are classically known as the via positiva and the via negativa in classical contemplative practices. So I wanted to kind of start with just his understanding of that and the way within which he was trying to express these practices for his time and place. This ceremony that we do tonight is a very old ceremony. And it was the understanding that human beings, in a sense, as they go through their life and they have various experiences, that there are things that happen to them or things that they do that cause them consternation or create or cause suffering for them. And that these things over time become what we would call ghosts. These are things that tend to haunt us. And so when we're going about our day, we see something, we hear something, and it can trigger in us this experience of this ghost that represents this old stuff. And so what do we do with that? Well, there's two things that we do. The first thing we realize is that the haunted house of our mind is built a certain way by certain conditioning. And the first thing we want to do is stop supporting that conditioning so that that house has no foundation anymore. But the other thing that we want to do is we want to feed those ghosts. In other words, we want to be able to not just kind of disassemble the foundation of the haunted house itself, but we want to do something with those ghosts besides just sort of pushing them out. Because the idea is that if we only do that, that those things remain as a part of our shadow, things that we have not yet integrated. So the feeding of the hungry ghost is a way of integrating the shadow. In fact, this whole ceremony is a way of dealing with the shadow aspect of the psyche. There's the movie that I think expresses this the best. There's a couple of them, but the one I think expresses it the best is The Sixth Sense. Have you guys ever seen The Sixth Sense? So in that, there's a young boy who sees dead people, right? That was the famous meme that came out of it. And he's frightened of these ghosts. And he has this counselor, the actor Bruce Willis plays this counselor, who is trying to help him to deal with these ghosts and this haunted house, which is his life. And at one point, Willis's character says to the boy, maybe instead of turning away from them, you should face them and you should listen to them and see what they have to say. And so this becomes the turning point in the film, because now the ghosts just want to be heard, they want to be understood. And once they do that, they leave them alone. And that, I think, is really one of the best fictional descriptions of what we're doing tonight. And so when we enter the space to do this, what we're enjoined to do is to think about those things that we want to put behind us. In other words, we want to let go of. And when we say let go, a lot of people have the idea of letting go as this. So when you open things up, it's that kind of experience. But our sense of letting go is this. So that we understand and we see everything and nothing is lost. Everything is integrated. And the important part of this practice is that we recognize that we can't do this. Sometimes when we have stuff in our past we think that there's some kind of relentless sort of kismet involved, and it colors all of our life, that everything that we experience then on out just proves this bad mojo we have going on. But one thing that we can do once we engage in some sort of practice like this, whether it's formal or informal, is we can realize that that's not how it really works. That the karma of the past, which is a Sanskrit word to define cause and effect, that karma isn't some sort of kismet or some sort of destiny, but rather it's certain things that have occurred in the past, but they don't have to continue into the future. The Buddha gave various sort of illustrations of this. One was like, imagine your mind like a field, and it has all these seeds of all these experiences in it. What you want to do is you want to burn out all the seeds that you don't want to grow. And the ones that you do want to grow, after you've burned out the ones that you don't, then you nurture and water and give sunlight to those seeds so that you grow new seeds, and that the negative seeds never come to fruition. The other image that I like a lot is that of a stream running down a mountain, because eventually all waters try to reach back to the sea. And so if that stream's coming down the mountain, it might seem relentless and that it's only going to go one way. But if we somewhere midway in that stream divert it, then it won't go that same direction, and it will go in a new direction. So the Buddhist concept behind this was the idea that we can truly be free from the karma of any negativity from the past. And we free ourselves through the practice of mindfulness and through certain sort of rituals like this, where we say to ourselves, okay, I'm done. I'm now moving on in a new direction. I'm not going to give life to that old stuff anymore. And I'm not going to reject that ghost, but I'm going to feed it by caring for it and giving it compassion. And then we can move forward refreshed in our life, not holding on to those things. And the reason I used this quote from Charles Williams was that, reconciliation, because that's another English interpretation of this ceremony, the ceremony of reconciliation and healing. And often the hardest part that we have is learning to forgive ourselves. We can forgive others, and often, even if that's difficult, we find that we kind of move there first. But forgiving ourselves and letting go of those things is something that we often find harder to do. But that is what this ceremony is about. It's about learning to forgive yourself and then being able to let go of the past so that you can enter into your life refreshed and new. And in the Buddhist cycle of liturgy of the year, we always start here, because you got to start with that kind of burning out and getting rid of the old stuff so that you can start to nurture the new. And then we move from here into the great feast of enlightenment. And so it's just a very beautiful and cool ceremony. So classically, and no one has to believe this literally, in the classic Buddhist cosmology, it was believed that when people die, sometimes their consciousness is not able to continue its spiritual evolution. So because of a strong attachment or aversion event, that being may become a hungry ghost. It's stuck in between. It hasn't been able to cross over into the realm of light. It has to sort of get stuck here. And sometimes it doesn't even know it's stuck. So another aspect of this ceremony in ancient times was the idea that at certain times of the year, there is something called the liminal. And this was a space by which the ghosts could commune with the living. And of course, this isn't just in Buddhism, this is all over the world. That's why we have things like Samhain and Halloween, things of that nature. But the Buddhist approach to it was to invite all the hungry ghosts in and do so in a way that we would then feed them so that they could be released from their past and they could move on in their spiritual evolution. So I think it's kind of cool, whether you believe in it literally or not. I think it's pretty cool. And finally, I want to say something about the ceremony with regard to one of my teachers, Bernie Glassman, the late Bernie Glassman. And for him, when he founded the Zen Peacemaker Order, he wanted to have a central rite or liturgy that would be practiced. And for him, it was this ceremony, the feeding of the hungry ghosts. Because part of his awakening experience was one time where he suddenly found himself in this space where he heard all these voices crying out. And he realized that all these hungry ghosts were crying out to be heard, to be fed. And so that became the central motif of his life. And he saw it not just in terms of the psychology, but he saw it as all those in our society that are like hungry ghosts. Those who've been cast out, those who don't fit in. One of the great actions of his life was a devotion to the homeless. And he experienced the homeless as hungry ghosts. I had my own experience of this many, many years ago. I was going through a difficult personal time, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. And I was feeling very, very destructive. And I remember when I got to sort of the penultimate expression of that grief, if you will, the total exposure of myself to the shadow. And this is before I met Bernie or knew his story. I had a similar feeling. I had this sense of all these people that I had not even met yet, crying out to me saying, no, no, we will need you. You need to do this with your life because they're out there and you don't even know them yet. And so I've always taken that also as a central idea behind my practice. So it's a beautiful ceremony. You know, as we always say with any of our ceremonies, you know, do with them what you will. We want you to understand what it's about, but do whatever feels right for you. So when you make your offering tonight, we'll get some pens. All I want you to do, and you don't have to write them out, obviously there's not much on here, but you can just write a letter or a word or something that symbolizes that for you. And we'll do this a little bit during our meditation time, and just reflect and write that down, and then hold on to that. And then when you come forward, you will light your piece of scroll or paper, and then you'll put it in the main incense offering. When you come up, just bow, and then light your offering, and then put it into the bowl, and then just bow slightly. And then it's customary when you turn around to bow to everybody, and then go back to your seat. The clergy will go first, and they'll kind of show you. So what I'd like to do at this time, and Mike, I just realized that I don't know if that candle is still remaining lit, but if it's not, would you take the votive from the lady altar and put it just on top of the candle there? Would you do that now? And Ev, if you wouldn't mind, there's some pens there on the table. Would you give those pens out? And Haley, if you would you take one and pass this in? Thank you. So let's just take some quiet time, and those of you that are watching with us from home, take time to do this as well. If you watched last week on Monday, I said this is the beginning of the Segaki season, so we take that week of those 9 days to reflect, but 7 to 9 days. But tonight, just take a little bit of time and reflect on what it is you want to let go of so that you can start fresh. Like I said, just take your time, and once everyone's ready, we'll begin the offering. While we're doing the offering, we will chant the Fudo mantra, and then once everybody's done their offering, then we will finish with the song of the Gate of Sweet Nectar. Has everyone had time? All right, so what we're going to do first is in your liturgy booklet, if there's in the very front, there's 4 pages, and that is going to be the ceremony. It's in the front. Do you have one? Does everybody have one? Now make sure it says at the top, the Liturgy of Great Reconciliation. If for some reason it doesn't, then share. Why don't you share with each other? Being one with all the Buddhas.
Raising your waking mind, the supreme meal is offered to all hungry spirits throughout space and time. All hungry spirits in 10 directions, please gather here. Sharing your distress, we offer you this food, hoping that you will resolve your thirst and hunger.
I pray that all who receive this offering will return its merits to all Buddhas and to all beings throughout space and time. In this way, they will be thoroughly satisfied. I further pray that in receiving this meal of all your sufferings, that they will be eliminated and that you will be liberated, so that being joyously reborn, you will play freely in the fields of the true country. Raising the Bodhi mind and practicing the enlightened way, may you become the future Buddhas without any further regress. Those who realize the way first, please vow to free all others throughout space and time.
With all our love, and with all our spirit, and with all our courage, inviting misery and suffering no longer, we vow to accomplish the way. May all manifestations of the Dharma world swiftly accomplish the way of Buddha together.
I am the Buddhas, and they are me.
We are the Buddhas, and they are us.
By this practice, we sincerely wish to extend love to our own personal being, friends, enemies, family, and community, and to all those beings we are unaware of for so much done on our behalf. May those who practice the way continue to empower, to enrich, and to enjoy. May those who have gone before us be released from suffering and nourish peacefulness. May all manifestations in the three worlds of past, present, and future receive loving benefactions. May those suffering on the three paths come to accord and be cleansed of all their ills. May they be liberated from samsara and arise in the true country together.
This is our life, the length of our days, day and night we meditate upon.
We will now begin the Fuda mantra, and the clergy make their offering first, and then everybody else. Namo Fudo Boza Namo Fudo Boza Namo Fudo Boza Namo Fudo Boza Namo Fudo Namo Fudo As a priest in the order of the Tathagata, I now release you from all karma of the past. It is nevermore. And I pronounce all those ghosts that we invited, that they are fed and they are free. I have been awakened with the Buddha, and it is no longer I who live, but the awakened lives through me. In the life which I now live in this form, I live by faith in the oneness of love, which gives endless. May the wisdom of the all-compassionate Buddha nature so shine within our hearts and minds that the mists of error, the veil of tears, and the foolish vanity of selfishness be dispelled. So shall we understand the changing nature of existence and reach spiritual peace, earnestly seeking the welfare of all beings.
May it be so.
I'm going to try it again.
May it be so.
May it be so. I didn't want to think Mike was the only one who felt that. That concludes our service. I thank everyone for attending tonight, wherever you may be, whatever part of the world that you're in. Please know that we are here for you. If you need more help, you can contact us through our newest website, AskSenseiTony.com. You can email us there, and we work with people everywhere, all over the world, through Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. So I hope if you have need, you will reach out to me.